Welcome to the deep dive. We've got this stack of sources you've shared with us, articles, notes, all giving us a peek into some, well, interesting crypto and market-related news from back on June 7th, 2025.
That's right. And this material, it's mostly from contributors over on CoinMarketCap, so you get a few different angles. We're looking at, potential market moves, specific company news, some, frankly, intriguing trades, and even a little bit of broader tech stuff mixed in.
Okay. So our mission today really is to sift through all this, cut through the noise you sometimes get, and pull out the key insights, the important bits. Will be your guides through what these specific reports were highlighting on that day.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump right in.
Absolutely. So first up, let's look at the market pulse from these sources. There's one headline here from a Crypto Daily guest post that definitely jumps out. Cardano, Litecoin, and Remittix look ready to soar in June if Bitcoin plays ball.
Yeah, that headline, it lays it out pretty clearly. A bullish prediction, basically, for ADA, LTC, and RPX for the month of June.
But, and it's a big but, that condition, if Bitcoin plays ball, what does that little phrase, that caveat from the source, really tell us about the market dynamics they're seeing?
Well, it really underscores the idea that, even if altcoins like ADA, LTC, RTX have their own positive things going on, their big upward moves, at least in this view, are still kind of tethered to Bitcoin.
Right.
Bitcoin's still seen as the main driver, the market anchor. If Bitcoin tanks or just treads water, it tends to drag everything else down with it, regardless of individual news.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this connects actually pretty directly to another source we've got here. This one's from PowerTrade.
Right.
Whales go all in on BTC calls. This piece talks about a wave of optimism in global markets on that specific Friday, June 7th.
Yes, exactly. PowerTrade points to the U.S. jobs report, saying that might have been a catalyst for the good mood.
Wow.
It showed 139,000 jobs added in May, which beat the expectation. I think it was around 125K, and unemployment held steady at 4.2%. Good news in traditional markets often kind of spills over sentiment-wise into crypto.
Okay, right. So here's where putting these two sources together gets really interesting. PowerTrade reports, whales go all in on BTC calls.
Yeah.
So according to this source, what does that phrase typically signal? And how could that specific whale activity potentially, be the Bitcoin plays ball condition that the other source mentioned?
Well, yeah, when reports talk about whales, they're really big players making significant bets, especially going all in on calls.
Right, calls meaning betting on price increases.
Exactly, betting the price will go up. That's usually read as a strong bullish signal, specifically for Bitcoin's price. They're basically positioning themselves for a BTC rally. So if these big influential players, the whales, are actively betting on Bitcoin rising, that could create exactly that positive momentum, that Bitcoin plays ball scenario that the Crypto Daily article suggested was needed for ADA, LTC, and RTX to potentially see that June surge they predicted. It's like one source states the requirement and the other points to something that might fulfill it.
Fascinating. Yeah, seeing how different reports from the same day might sort of line up like that. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's move on to some specific company and entity news, drawing from the Coinco and Crypto Newsland sources.
Okay, so first from Coinco, we have news about Arca. The big event reported is that Arca divested all of its shares in Circle.
All of them. Wow. And what was the reason given in the source for such a big move?
It seems to stem from a dispute over Circle's IPO allocation, how the shares were allocated in their initial public offering.
Okay.
Yeah, the source actually quotes Arca's CIO, Jeff Dorman, says he was pretty critical of how Circle managed that IPO allocation. And, the article notes this whole thing could potentially impact USDC.
Right, because Circle issues USDC.
Exactly, USDC being a major stablecoin. So any significant move or, public dispute involving a major shareholder like Arca definitely gets market watchers' attention.
Makes sense. Okay, staying with Coinco for a moment, they also touched on an issue at Coinbase, a user issue. Gotten freezing.
Yes. Well, the news here is that Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong addressed this. He announced they've actually made substantial progress, claiming an 82% reduction in these specific kinds of issues.
82%.
Yeah. And he also, according to the source, reiterated a commitment to keep improving things and boost transparency for users. Look, an 82% reduction, if that number holds up, is a pretty significant operational improvement reported there.
Yeah, sounds like a big step forward, assuming the reporting's accurate. Okay, now let's jump over to Crypto Newsland. They reported a, pretty significant development involving Greg Kidd and a company called No Labs.
Right. The report says Greg Kidd is acquiring a controlling stake in No Labs.
Okay.
And interestingly, the acquisition is being funded with a mix using both Bitcoin and cash.
Bitcoin and cash. And with this move, he's stepping in as both CEO and chairman of No Labs. But the really interesting part mentioned in the source is the strategic shift they're planning.
Yes, exactly. No Labs is apparently set to adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy. Now, the source gives a specific detail here, although it's slightly cut off in the text we have. It says, Bitcoin making up 82% of its M.
Bitcoin making up 82% of its M.
Okay, we'll report it just like that. But even with that little cutoff, seeing a company plan to make Bitcoin such a core part of its, presumably its balance sheet or treasury, especially a figure like 82% of whatever that M stands for, maybe market cap, maybe management assets, who knows, but 82% is a huge commitment. It suggests a really strong corporate belief in Bitcoin as a strategic asset.
It really does. We've seen companies like MicroStrategy pioneer this, but 82%, as reported, that suggests a very, very deep integration. If true, it definitely adds another data point to that whole corporate Bitcoin adoption narrative.
For sure. Okay, now let's pivot again slightly. Let's look at a very specific kind of unusual bit of market action reported in these sources, and then we'll touch on some related tech news.
This detail from CoinCrypto News definitely caught my eye. It mentions a specific leveraged trade by someone named Ogle.
Right. Ogle apparently placed a pretty large bet against the token Trumpy.
Against it? How large?
A $1 million short trade placed on the Hyperliquid platform and using 10x leverage.
Wow. Okay. $1 million short, 10x leverage. That's a high-stakes bet on a pretty specific token.
It absolutely is. And that leverage, of course, just amplifies everything, the potential gains, but also, crucially, the potential losses. The source notes the liquidation price for this short position is $12.49.
Okay.
And it also mentions the price at the time was kind of hovering near his entry range, so a bit precarious.
Yeah, no kidding. It just makes you think purely from observing what the source document, what drives someone to make such a targeted high-leverage bet against a specific, maybe politically tinged token like that. Again, we're just reporting what the source says about the action.
Right. No speculation on motive.
But it's a really fascinating snapshot of individual market activity on that particular day.
It is indeed a bold move captured in the reporting. Okay, shifting gears just a little bit now. The Crypto Time source brings in some broader tech news, specifically from Google.
Okay. What did they announce?
They announced a preview of an enhanced AI model they've developed.
A new AI model. What's it called?
They're calling it Gemini 2.5 Pro, and Google's labeling it as their most intelligent model yet. Interestingly, the source describes it as an improvement over the Gemini 2.5 Pro.
An improvement over itself?
Yeah.
Maybe a typo in the source, or perhaps implying an iterative update to 2.5 Pro?
Could be either. We just report the detail as it's written in the source.
Right. And look, while big AI advancements like this aren't always directly crypto-related, they're definitely part of this whole fast-evolving tech world that, you, our listener, are probably interested in. And sometimes these different fields, AI and crypto, they can connect in surprising ways later on.
Absolutely. It's all part of that bigger technological shift happening.
Okay, so let's try and pull together the main threads from these sources we've looked at for June 7th, 2025. We saw these predictions for a potential June rally in ADA, LTC, and RTX.
But hinged on Bitcoin doing well.
Right, hinged on BTC playing ball. And that condition might potentially be supported by other reports of general market optimism and specific whale activity showing bullish bets on Bitcoin itself.
Then we covered some significant company-specific news. Arca selling all its Circle shares due to that IPO dispute. Coinbase reporting that 82% reduction in account freezing problems.
Yeah.
And No Labs, under new leadership from Greg Kidd, planning to adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy, with the source mentioning Bitcoin making up 82% of its
Right. And we also touched on that really specific market action, Ogle's $1 million 10x leverage short against Trump.
A whale biter, probably.
And rounded it out with broader tech news, like Google previewing its enhanced Gemini 2.5 Pro AI model. So these were the highlights coming straight from the specific sources provided for that day, a real snapshot.
Exactly. And considering all these different data points from just one day, you've got a company making a massive strategic shift towards Bitcoin, a trader making a specific high leverage bet, major AI news happening at the same time. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, what kind of patterns or maybe future connections might be emerging in this broader digital and financial world?
Yeah, that's the final thought, really. How might these seemingly separate developments Corporate strategy, specific market speculation, AI progress. How might they start to influence each other or connect in ways we don't quite see yet? That's definitely something these June 7th sources get you thinking about.